If you've got children or are planning to have children, or if you've got grandchildren, this month's episode of the Rich Habits, Poor Habits podcast is just for you. And even if you haven't got children, you're going to get some great money lessons from it because we're going to share 7 tips to make sure your children grow up rich. And it's not just about money. We're talking about children becoming more successful in all areas of their life. So welcome to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's most trusted property commentator who has once again been voted Australia's leading property investment advisor. That's the 5th time he's won a similar award in the last 7 years.
Now, I believe it's important to have rich children. There, I said it. Now, before you tell me there are more important things in life than money, let me clarify what I mean. Rich children grow into becoming rich adults who are wealthy. But they're also resilient, they're curious, they're independent, they're compassionate. Being rich is about wealth in all facets of life, if you've gotten to understand the sort of things that I'm talking about. Too often, people focus on just one element. Usually it's money or other elements. So how do we go about making sure our children are going to become rich? Now, if you don't have children, still pay attention to this podcast, because as I chat with Tom Cooley, you may have children one day, you may have grandchildren one day, you were somebody's child. Don't think this isn't relevant to you. So today, to discuss the habits that you can develop to make sure your children become rich and successful, I'm joined again for my regular Rich Habits, Poor Habits podcast by Tom Cooley. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, Michael. How you doing, my friend?
Good, thank you. And what I wanted to discuss today is the research that you have done, the Rich Habits study that you did a number of years ago that revealed that rich people cultivate certain habits and pass them on to their children. I guess we've discussed the concept before that, Tom, we're really the best models that our children have got.
Well, and that's backed up by research studies. There's this one study that I reference all the time by Nicholas Christakis, and he's from Yale University. He did a study on 50,000 families, and what he found, Michael, which was kind of startling, is that you and I and everybody else, the habits that we have are predominantly forged or by the age of 9. And so what are you doing up until the age of 9? Well, for the most part, you're at home. Sure, you start going to school at age 5 or 6, but for the most part, you're with your parents. You're being raised by somebody on almost, 10, 12 hours a day that's with you, and you're picking up their habits. And so those habits stay with you for life.
Of course, it's not just what they say, it's what you see them do, what you experience. And I think most of our parents are trying to do the right thing. Unfortunately, they had bad mentors also, didn't they, Tom?
Yeah, and this is problematic because this is why there's something called the cycle of poverty, the generational cycle of poverty. It's almost consistent that about 3 to 6% of poor people break out of poverty. Why is that? Well, it's because the majority of them are being raised in poor households who have poor habits, and those habits perpetuate from one generation to the next. There's a small percentage of people that are able to pick up habits outside of the home that, maybe from a mentor or from a teacher or from whoever, an influencer in their life, and they're able to break out of poverty. And that's what we are, Michael. We're the influencers. We're the individuals who are trying to help people break out of poverty, not only poverty, but break out of the middle class.
Well, we're very lucky because the country where most people are listening to this podcast, the countries they're in at the moment, they've got the ability to do that. There's still, unfortunately, some areas of the world where it's really hard to break out of poverty. But I know in your Rich Habits study, you found the majority of the people you were studying were actually self-made. They weren't given a silver spoon in their mouth. They weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth.
That's right. And in my study, close to about 46 or 47% of the self-made millionaires came from the middle class, and about 31% came from poverty. So clearly, if you're born and raised in poverty or in the middle class, doesn't mean you can't become wealthy. You can break out of the poverty or the middle class. But as I found in my research, the driver there is your habits. You are your habits. And, 40% or more of everything you do every single day, according to a Duke University 2006 study, are habits.
But you can change your habits, and that's what our book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits, is all about. And I'm very proud of it. I know you are too, because it's actually doing well, not just in our home countries of the United States and Australia, but it's actually now been translated into 5 languages, which means other publishers have recognized the importance of your study and my research. So you can change your habits. And I think that's what I want to talk about now, Tom, because kids who've grown out of poverty, who've moved to the next level, have seen their parents do certain things and they've learned certain habits. What are they?
Yeah, so there's a common thread that I found in my research among the poor people in the middle class who are able to break out of poverty, and it's they do certain things that the other poor people won't do. And one of them is, I call it a growth habit. It's a self-improvement habit, but it's reading to learn. Now, a lot of the kids who do read, they read for entertainment. Well, the parents who do a really good job as success mentors, they force their kids to read other than for entertainment. They force them to read to learn. And 88% of the rich people in my study, the self-made millionaires, they spend 30 minutes or more every day reading to learn. Now, it was typically the reading was related to whatever they did for a living or a dream that they were pursuing. Maybe it's even a side gig, but they were reading to learn. And because of that, they were gaining knowledge every day about whatever it is they were pursuing. And that knowledge was incremental. It grew every day. And it was one of the reasons why they were able to break out of whatever their demographic was.
Now, it's interesting. Some people listening to this podcast are going to say, boring. I've heard you say it before, Michael. I've read about it in your blogs before, Tom. Why are you going on about this? But it is a common thread that comes up over and over again. You hear it from Warren Buffett and from Bill Gates. I know it's one of your habits. It's one of mine. And so therefore, yes, you're allowed to spend time enjoying and entertaining and reading things for fun, but you definitely have to grow and learn by having that habit of reading. It's a success habit, not just of children, but of adults. But again, if that's your habit and you pass it on to your kids, make it fun for them as well. What's another habit that we can teach our children to help them move up to the next rung?
Probably one of the most important things that parents can do in helping their kids grow up to become successful is, watching who they're associating with. You could be raised in a rich household, and if you're the type of parent that's not, aware of who your child's associating with, they could be associating with the wrong kind of people, and those people, your habits spread like a virus throughout your social networks. So if you're a parent and you're not teaching your kids good habits, somebody else is teaching them habits, and they may not be habits that are in their best interest. So as a parent, you have to make sure you know the kids that your child is associating with. You might want to even know who their parents are, because their parents' habits, and by understanding what their parents are like, you can get a pretty clean picture of what their child's going to be like. And if you don't like it, you really shouldn't have your child associating with them. I'm not talking about just drugs, heroin and cocaine and whatever other drugs there are that your child's being exposed to and not aware of it. It could be cheating, it could be stealing, it could be doing things that are, maybe borderline criminal, and you're not aware of it because you're not on top of it as a parent. You want to make sure you know who your child's inner circle are, who they are, and then you want to kick those out of that inner circle who are bad influences, toxic relationships. You want to get them out of that inner circle so your child will grow up and embrace your habits, the habits you want them to follow.
Unfortunately, it's a huge responsibility being a parent, isn't it, Tom?
It's a big responsibility, and it's a much harder responsibility nowadays because, in our modern day society, you have two parents who are working, right?
You've got social media, so therefore they don't have to go out in the grounds, in the garden, into the street or the play yard to play with people who are they associating with on Facebook, on Instagram, on those sort of things as well. So yes, a good habit is to cultivate good relationships. Now, again, this is not a judge of people. I know some people are going to listen to this and say, filthy rich, dirty money, and it's not fair, and we want some of that. I think we've discussed so often in previous sessions that just handing it to people, if they're not ready for it, giving handouts isn't going to get them out of their poverty, is it, Tom?
No, and fine. I think you make a great point here. Forget about money. What about who they're interacting with on social media or with their inner circle? Maybe these kids eat a lot of junk food. Maybe they eat a lot of candy. Maybe they don't do any exercise. Maybe they curse a lot. Maybe they have poor etiquette. Maybe they're passing along all of these bad things that have nothing at all to do with money. Well, guess what? When your child becomes an adult and has forged some of those bad habits and they start going on job interviews, they're going to be behind the eight ball because who's going to want to hire a kid that doesn't even know how proper etiquette? You go to lunch and you're eating a certain way because nobody taught you except your friend. So there's a lot of things that have nothing at all to do with money that are going to impact how successful your child's life is going to be as an adult.
Now, one of them you mentioned a moment ago is exercise and sport, and that also keeps cropping up with adults, because I know you've explained in previous podcasts how aerobic exercise increases your IQ. That's another interesting topic. And if people are interested in that, go back to the Michael Yardney podcast and just do a quick search on IQ. And Tom explains how your IQ is not fixed, but it can change. And there's a number of ways of doing it. And aerobic exercise is only one. But how important is it to teach our kids about exercise, sport, teamwork?
Well, it's fine to talk to them about it as a parent, how important it is. But obviously, the kids are going to watch what you do. So if you're sitting on a couch drinking beers and eating, potato chips, they're going to do the same thing. So it's a monkey see, monkey do. There's certain brain cells that they're called mirror neurons, and kids mirror their parents. So if your parent, exercise is important. My kids, every single one of them exercises. Why? Because since the time they were little babies, they saw me out there running and jogging. And they picked up these habits, and I amped it up when I started doing my Rich Habits study. Instead of doing 2 or 3 days a week, I was doing 5 or 6 days a week. And now more of my kids exercise regularly because monkey see, monkey do. So you want to, be a good model for your child and also do the talking. Talk the talk, but walk the walk.
Now, my kids have grown up, and I'm lucky enough to have 10 grandchildren in my blended family. And I spend a lot of time with my 2 daughters and their kids, and I'm noticing that they're teaching them anger management. It's fascinating. They've gone and learned through their schools, interestingly, how to do it, because it's normal for an adult to feel anger, to feel frustration, but we've learned how to express it. But it's interesting, I'd forgotten, because it's a long time since I've been a parent of a small child, those temper tantrums and the difficulty when they don't know how to express it, they don't know how to handle it, and it gets to them, Tom.
Yeah, so one of the rich habits, or one of the data points that I uncovered in my research, was something I thought was fascinating, and it's that these wealthy people, particularly the self-made millionaires, they forged a habit of controlling their emotions. I have wondered why. I didn't understand really going into my study how important emotions were to business, to doing business, to being successful in life. Well, just think about it, Michael. It's common sense. Do you want to do business with somebody or engage in any commercial enterprise with somebody who's up and down, who's emotionally unbalanced? You just never know what kind of person you're going to run into from one day to the next. Well, wealthy people understand that. And so they've tried to moderate their emotions. In fact, I'm reading a great book on Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller. In this book, it talks so much about how he really made a concerted effort to control his emotions from a very early age. And it wasn't just him, it was his mother. If the kids lost their temper or got angry, they got hit with a stick. And nowadays it's not something that many parents do, but she wanted to enforce this rich habit of being in control of your emotions, because anger is perhaps the most costly emotion. If you can spend 10 years building a relationship with somebody who can really open doors for you, and then for whatever reason you have a run-in with them and you lose your temper and become angry and you just destroy that relationship in 5 minutes. And it's hard to repair something like that. So you've really got to control your emotions, be on an even keel. People love doing business with people that they believe have control over their emotions.
It's not just doing business. Who wants an employee who loses their temper? And boy, have I seen people I know reasonably well lose their job over and over again because they weren't taught that habit as a child of managing your anger. Now, it's not that you're not allowed to get cross. It's normal to have emotion. It's normal to feel frustration, but you've got to learn how to handle it using the correct words, doing it in a way that's culturally acceptable rather than doing it in a way that's socially unacceptable, Tom.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you're going to immediately start cursing at people because it's just a habit and you disagree with them, they're not going to want to have anything to do with you. They're not going to want to employ you. They're not going to want to refer you to anybody, and it just kind of cuts you off at the knees. So it's a very important, rich habit to control your emotions.
One of the other fun things I'm seeing my grandkids do is now exploring their opportunities, their talents. They're doing gym, they're playing sport after school, one's taking up a musical instrument. That seems like an important habit to instill in your kids as well.
Yeah, so this goes to the rich habit of experimentation. We really have no idea what our talents, our innate talents are, unless we experiment with different activities. And this is one of the reasons why we have something in the States called the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, right? So
we still have that in Australia too. You don't hear much about it anymore, though.
Yeah, it's too bad, because it's probably the single greatest thing you could do for your kid, in my opinion. From my research, a lot of the successful people I found, I was startled by how many of them were Eagle Scouts and Gold Award winners with the Girl Scouts, Eagle Scouts with the Boy Scouts, Gold Award winners with the Girl Scouts. And it was disproportionate how many successful people were part of the Boy Scouts and achieved that high ranking there. And those designations, what they really mean is you experimented with a lot of things, because in order to become an Eagle Scout, you have to have 24 badges. That's 24 activities, 24 different things. They could be law, could be astrophysics, it could be building a house. It could be, they have 100 different types of badges you can get. Well, if you're experimenting with all of these different things through a structured environment like the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts, your kid is going to be able to find something that they like. Number one, that they like. Number two, that actually comes easy to them. And that's the key. You expose an innate talent by this way. It's easy for you to do. It's easier for you to do than for the person next to you. That's an innate talent, and that's a strength, and that's something you should exploit. Typically, when you have an innate talent, something you're good at, better than other people, you like it. It's easier for you to pick up. You enjoy doing it more. And so this is why experimentation is so critical.
What we're working through are the habits that we should be teaching our children to make them, well, I started the podcast off by saying richer, but I think you're recognizing that we're saying be successful in all areas of life. Because as I've explained, and Tom's explained, our brains are wired to emulate our parents. We're picking up their habits. We're picking up their behaviors. We're picking up their ways of thinking in the first 8-9 years of our life. We're picking up their emotions. And it's all happening at an unconscious or subconscious level. And when children learn these habits, they learn these ways of thinking, they learn these ways of doing, they're doing it with the knowledge and the emotions of a child. The trouble is, unless you are aware of how they affect you later in life, you're still carrying them on later in life. And Tom, when we get to Wealth Retreat and we see all those successful people, isn't it interesting how deep down inside they still have some of these things niggling away, and despite their logic and despite all the money they've made, these deep-rooted emotions, these deep-rooted habits still hold them back.
Yeah, well, I'm a perfect example of that. I grew up in a family where we were rich and then we were poor. And so for most of my childhood, we were poor. And I always remember my mother quoting the Bible. There was one, scripture that she would always quote. It was in Mark. And she said it was easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven. And so what I took from that was rich people are bad and evil, right? Because God said so. And my mother inculcated that into me at an early age. And I carried that with me until I think I was about 45 years old when I started doing my rich habits research, Michael. And I started finding out that these rich people were outrageously good people. They were 10 times better than the poor people I was raised with, because they were doing things with their time and their money that were just extraordinary. They were funding nonprofits. They were starting nonprofits. They were helping their local community. They were building wings to hospitals. They were housing poor people. They were doing all of these amazing, great things. And I kept thinking, wait a minute, I thought rich people were evil. My mother told me so. She even quoted scripture to tell me that. So, I was stuck with that. And I'm sure a lot of other people who were raised in a poor household were stuck with a lot of limiting negative beliefs that just are myths. They're not true.
The problem is, deep down inside, if you think rich people are bad, if you think rich people are greedy, and all of a sudden you come into money because you get a raise at work or you make a success and you're investing, you tend to lose it because deep down, you want to be a good person. You don't want to be a bad person like you heard about. I mean, there are things we heard like dirty money, filthy rich. I mean, I remember one of the first things kids do with money is put it in their mouth. And so often the parents say, oh, don't do that. Money's dirty. And one thing leads to another. You've got these funny thoughts. So I guess the point we're both trying to make at the moment is you should be teaching your kids abundance. You should be teaching your kids that it's not an either or, and that it's all right to be rich. It's all right to be wealthy, not at the expense of others, because that's that sort of limited pie thing that if I have my part of the pizza, I'm leaving you with less. I want an expandable pie, Tom, where if we all do well and are more productive, our country is better. There's enough for everybody.
Yeah, that's right. And so the parents have a duty or a responsibility to not stereotype rich people in a negative way, because I think every parent wants their child to grow up and be financially free, not have money. I mean, if you're a parent, do you say, boy, I hope my child grows up to be poor? Nobody.
Of course not.
Nobody says that, right? What they really want deep down, the parent, for their child, is for them to actually be a really good person, number one, and a successful person. A successful person in the sense that they don't have to worry about paying their bills, because that causes an enormous amount of stress. So if you're raising your children to appreciate wealthy people and their success, then you're actually encouraging them to pursue success. If you raise them where they think that rich people are evil, then you're encouraging them to run away from success, because there's no real desire. They don't want to be a rich person. They want instead to be a poor person, because poor people get into the kingdom of God and rich people don't.
Funny about that. I think another thing that we have to as parents do is encourage our children to dream big. I found most people don't achieve what they deserve, what they could achieve in life, not because they've dreamed too big and not achieved it, but because they've set their goals too low and they've achieved it. A lot of people seem to say, oh, you can't do that. No, you can't get a college education. Nobody in our family's ever finished university. No, you can't do that job. That's just for the rich people. It actually makes people aim too low, Tom. We've got to teach our kids to dream.
Yeah, well, so we have something in America called the American Dream, and China has now embraced that because of thanks to their shift to capitalism, and Australia has it too. I grew up in my house, even though my mother was saying those things, my father was saying, you could be president of the United States if you want to. And I always remember that. I said, wow, that's pretty great that we live in a country where we're poor and I could be president of the United States. So I always believe.
Well, Tom, sorry to interrupt you, but your country has proved that anyone can be president of the United States.
Anybody, you can be any. Look, we had an actor, and now we have a real estate mogul, celebrity, TV personality. And you had, before that, President Obama, who was a social, he organized, a community organizer. We had a peanut farmer, Jimmy Carter.
That's right. Well, let's not talk about him. He didn't do too well.
So there's a lot of truth in that. And if you're raised in a household where you think you can become president, well, guess what? Maybe you don't want to be president, but that sticks in your head. And you say, well, I don't want to be president, but I would like to be the CEO of a major big company. So the president is just a metaphor for pursuing success. And if parents are teaching their kids that they can do anything and be anything they want to be, that gives them a leg up. They just have to dream and pursue their dreams. Dream setting is a rich habit, and it requires you to not only dream, but to take action on your dreams. And when you take action on your dreams, that means you have to set goals, and that means you have to pursue goals, and goals are physical activities. So it's a good thing to indoctrinate your kids into the idea that they can be or do anything, because it allows them to dream, and dream setting is a rich habit.
Well, fantastic, Tom. Thank you. So you've just shared with us 7 habits that will help us allow our children to become more successful in life, not just money-wise, but in all ways. The first one was reading. The next one was cultivating relationships. Exercising is important. Managing anger, teaching them how to manage anger. Having an abundant mindset's critical as well, and dream setting. So that's a fantastic summary, but there's so much more information in your blog, richhabits.net, the regular blogs you put on my site, Property Update. But if you're interested in this, if you want to know more about this, if you want to become richer yourself by recognizing your poor habits and getting rid of some of those and moving to rich habits, then get Tom and my book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits. You can get it online by going to richhabitspoorhabits.com, or you can get it on Amazon. And Tom, I've had a lot of fun as always with you today. So look forward to having our next chat real soon.
Yeah, and it'll be equally educational, Michael. We always try and educate and help people become successful.
Well, I think that's the meaning behind all this, because we have crawled out and crawled up and been successful to a degree, and we're wanting to show other people how to do it as well.
Yeah, why not? If we can do it, they can do it, because
exactly.
Neither of us came from wealth.
That's true. Okay, catch up with you real soon.
Sounds good.
It's always great speaking with Tom. He's so passionate about his topic, and it was fun catching up with him recently. He comes once a year to Australia to present at my Wealth Retreat conference on the Gold Coast. If you got benefit from today's show, you love our book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits, go to richhabitspoorhabits.com and get yourself a copy, a Kindle type copy online, or a real hard copy. That would be great. And also, if you got benefit, pass this on to somebody else so they can help their children grow up richer as well. So tell somebody about the show, or tweet it, or Facebook, or whichever way you'd like to tell people about it. And in between these monthly episodes of Rich Habits, Poor Habits that I run between the regular Michael Yardney podcast, you can get Tom's blogs on my Property Update website. If you don't subscribe to my daily newsletter, do so now at propertyupdate.com.au, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon. In the meantime, spend your time wisely.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney Podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?